Chapter 34-36. Looking at Bewitching's expression, Chu Jinfeng couldn't help but say helplessly, "You are really not modest at all." For this kind of thing, if I'm modest, wouldn't it be hypocritical? Bewitching grinned. After these days of getting along, he and Chu Jinfeng had become familiar with each other. He found that Chu Jinfeng himself was also a person who liked to joke very much, but he was broad-minded, far from an ordinary narrow-minded person, so he didn't care about jokes at all. Chu Jinfeng nodded. That's also true. Recently, many people have been envious of your good fortune. What's the use of envying me? Bewitching raised his eyebrows. There is only one Bailey Hongzhuang in the world, and she is already my wife. Even if you wait until the next life, you won't have a chance. Bewitching swung Chu Jinfeng's hand away from his neck, and then patted Chu Jinfeng's shoulder. Senior Chu, you are not young anymore. Instead of envying me, you might as well take good care of this Taoist companion, so that you don't have to idle around all day. Seeing Bewitching preaching to him in a serious manner, Chu Jinfeng couldn't help but be surprised. Yo, you brat, do you know that I am your senior? In terms of time spent in Penglai Palace, you are naturally my senior, but in terms of feelings, I am your senior. Bewitching chuckled. Okay, I can see that you are deliberately showing off. You might as well go away, so as not to make others jealous. Chu Jinfeng directly pushed Bewitching aside. He was much older than Bewitching. He didn't expect to be laughed at by Bewitching for being alone. He was really bitter in his heart. After seeing Chu Jinfeng's sad appearance, when Ziren couldn't help but come over and said with a smile, "Senior brother Chu, I think you don't need to feel empty and lonely. This senior sister Ren is not bad. If you work harder, won't you have a beauty in your arms in the future?" Recently, he found that Chu Jinfeng and Ren Zimei had a lot of interaction between them. According to his judgment, they were a couple, and they were just short of breaking the window paper. Listening to Ziren's words, Chu Jinfeng raised his eyebrows and said, "You think I have hope?" Ziren nodded. "Of course, I can see it at a glance. Senior Chu, you have to work harder and strike the iron while it's hot. If you delay it for too long, the final result will be uncertain." "I thought I had hope, but I haven't succeeded." Chu Jinfeng spread out his hands. If he could succeed, he would have succeeded a long time ago. Until now, he hadn't succeeded. God knows what the problem was. Shengguan Ying saw that Ziren didn't want to chat with Chu Jinfeng and actually came up with a bad idea. She couldn't help but pinch Ziren's waist. "Ziren, don't come up with random ideas here. I'm helping senior brother Chu. How can you say that I'm giving advice?" When Ziren said seriously, "Junior sister, let me listen to Ziren's idea first. If it succeeds, I will treat you to a meal after we go out." Chu Jinfeng smiled brightly. Seeing this, Shengguan Ying was helpless. Sure enough, when two men got together, nothing good would happen. Compared to Bewitching, when Ziren liked to come up with random ideas. Chapter 34-37. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw that Shengguan Ying suddenly came to her side, she couldn't help but laugh and tease. "Ying, what's wrong? Did Ziren make you angry again?" "I don't have anything to be angry about. I'm just afraid that he will come up with bad ideas and make senior sister Ren unhappy." Shengguan Ying's face showed a touch of helplessness. She had a very good impression of senior sister Ren. Since they came here, senior brother Ren and senior sister Ren were very kind to them. Now, she didn't know what bad ideas Ziren and Chu Jinfeng were coming up with. She now found that Chu Jinfeng and Ziren were the same kind of people. How is it related to senior sister Ren again? Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned. She knew that Chu Jinfeng was very close to Bewitching and Ziren recently. But it was fine if the three of them were chatting, but now it was related to senior sister Ren. "Isn't it because?" Shengguan Ying whispered the reason to Bailey Hongzhuang. After listening to all this, Bailey Hongzhuang showed a look of understanding. Since senior brother Chu has such thoughts, if Ziren can help to fulfill the beauty of the two, this is also a good thing. If it's a good way to pursue, I naturally agree. But I look at Ziren and I'm afraid that he will come up with bad ideas. If it doesn't succeed, it will destroy the relationship between senior sister Ren and senior brother Chu. Wouldn't that be terrible? Shangguan Yingying felt a wave of helplessness. She had been with Wen Xiren for so long, so she understood Wen Xiren's bad ideas very well. It was fine if he made her angry, but if he made senior sister Ren angry, then it would be troublesome. Don't worry, Xiren should have a sense of propriety. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. Xiren usually deliberately makes you angry. He won't come up with bad ideas on other people's matters. After being together for so long, she also understood that Xiren liked to deliberately tease Shangguan Yingying, so he deliberately messed up some things for fun. However, when it came to other people's affairs, Xiren was still very steady. I hope so. Shangguan Yingying pursed her lips, obviously not believing Xiren. When will our Xiren be as steady as Bewitching? I'm just afraid that if Xiren really becomes like that, you won't be used to it. I won't. Bailey Hongzhuang turned around and saw Wen Xiren and Chu Jinfeng engaged in a heated discussion. Chu Jinfeng's face revealed a rare hint of embarrassment. Later, he even pulled Bewitching over. In the blink of an eye, 13 out of 15 days had passed. In 2 days, everyone could return to Penglai Palace through the transmission array. Perhaps they thought that after returning to Penglai Palace, everyone could rest at ease. Everyone was in a very good mood and the atmosphere became more and more cheerful. With less scheming, even Bailey Hongzhuang and the others felt very comfortable getting along with each other. Night fell again. Bailey Hongzhuang and others were now very familiar with observing the situation around them. For 13 days in a row, they spent their nights like this, so now they had become accustomed to this situation. Chapter 34-38. Time passed by little. More than 40 cultivators in the inner hall gathered together. Every time they passed peacefully, everyone felt happy from the bottom of their hearts. Their injured team really couldn't afford any more trouble. They just wanted to go back to Penglai Palace to recuperate. They would come back here to participate in the battle after their injuries were completely healed. In my opinion, the skeleton army should not appear tonight. After today, we can go back and rest. This time, I will recuperate for a while after I go back. I am not far from breaking through. I plan to go to the cultivation area to take the opportunity to break through this bottleneck and then come back. In that case, I have to congratulate you in advance. Everyone lowered their voices and chatted. From time to time, they would pay attention to their surroundings. Compared to the tension from a few days ago, everyone had relaxed a little in these 2 days. They only felt that the skeleton army would not appear. However, after seeing such a calm scene, Bailey Hongzhuang frowned quietly. For some reason, she had a faint ominous premonition in her heart. Bewitching, I keep feeling that something is not right tonight. Bailey Hongzhuang turned her head to look at Bewitching. Her delicate jade-like face was a little complicated. She carefully observed the surroundings and found that there was nothing special. But for some reason, the ominous premonition in her heart could not dissipate. Bewitching's eyes also deepened a little. Actually, I also have a feeling of uneasiness. It seems that something is going to happen. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching looked at each other. The feeling in their hearts could not help but become stronger. As far as the current situation was concerned, no one felt that there was any problem. But this was their intuition. Although this intuition could not be supported by any reason, it was often unexpectedly accurate. Thinking back to when they were training in the desert world, they often had this feeling. Every time they were ambushed, they would almost always have this kind of intuition. There was no evidence to support them, but the final result every time told them that their judgment was not wrong. Looks like something might happen tonight. Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes. They had been safe and sound for the past 10 days. They were not far from leaving this place. She did not expect that tonight might give them a surprise. Be prepared and be extra careful, Bewitching said in a deep voice. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and told Shangguan Yingying and Wen Xiren their thoughts. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Shangguan Yingying and Wen Xiren were also very surprised. How did you know? It's just a hunch. I can't guarantee that it's completely accurate, but it's always good to be more careful. Xiren nodded. There was enough trust and tacit understanding between them. There was no need for any explanation and they would choose to believe him. Senior Chu, something might be wrong tonight. Everyone must not be careless. Bewitching looked at Chu Jinfeng and said with a serious expression. Even though he knew that the possibility of everyone believing him was very small, in the face of danger, he still had to remind everyone. Chu Jinfeng was slightly stunned. How did you know? This is my hunch, Bewitching said. Chapter 34-39. Bewitching had only just arrived at this training ground. He had never even seen the skeleton army before. Yet, he had a premonition. This was too unbelievable. Looking at Chu Jinfeng's incredulous expression, Bewitching couldn't help but explain, whether this premonition is accurate or not, it's always good for everyone to be more careful. If my premonition is wrong, then it's undoubtedly better to have a safe night. Hearing this, Chu Jinfeng nodded. You're right. It's always good to be careful. The next moment, Chu Jinfeng directly said to Ren Ziheng and the others, I think there's something unusual tonight. Everyone should be alert and be more careful. He didn't mention Bewitching. After all, Bewitching was still a newcomer. He was afraid that no one would believe him. On the contrary, if he said it, everyone would undoubtedly believe him. In the end, even if nothing really happened, he only needed to make a joke to cover up this matter. Seeing that Chu Jinfeng chose to believe him, Bewitching's eyes brightened. He could understand the deeper meaning of Chu Jinfeng's choice. Chu Jinfeng, I rarely hear that you have a premonition. Ren Zimei couldn't help but chuckle. If your premonition is wrong, then you have to treat everyone to a meal. No problem. Chu Jinfeng laughed. Then what if my premonition is right? Ren Zimei was slightly stunned. If your premonition is right, then everyone will thank you. Chu Jinfeng shook his head and joked, that won't do. If my premonition is right, then let me treat you to a meal. How about it? As Chu Jinfeng's voice fell, everyone present couldn't help but sigh. Everyone knew about the unclear relationship between Chu Jinfeng and Ren Zimei, but they didn't expect Chu Jinfeng to be so straightforward at this time. However, if these two could really become a couple, everyone would be happy to see it. Ren Zimei looked at Chu Jinfeng in surprise. She, who had always been straightforward, suddenly stopped at this moment. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Okay, I promise you. Ren Zimei raised her chin and said, it's a deal. Ren Ziheng shook his head when he saw this scene. Chu Jinfeng usually had a sloppy personality, but he also knew that this guy was serious about what he said at this moment. Since the bet has been agreed upon, let's pay attention to our surroundings. It's rare for Chu Jinfeng to have such intuition. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone put away their joking expressions and carefully looked around. They knew very well that Chu Jinfeng wanted to pursue Ren Zimei, but he would not find such a reason to pursue her. Since he said so, perhaps he really did have some intuition. Junior brother D, I'm betting everything on your intuition, Chu Jinfeng said in a low voice. Bewitching smiled faintly. Brother Chu, I don't know whether I should hope that my intuition is accurate or that he is inaccurate. Chu Jinfeng's expression was somewhat complicated. In this case, it would be best if the skeleton army did not appear. However, if that happened, they would lose the bet. Chapter 34-40. As soon as the crowd finished speaking, they suddenly heard a series of rustling sounds. Hearing this sound, Ren Ziheng and the others could not help but change their expressions because they were not unfamiliar with this sound at all. Every time the skeleton army appeared, it would sound like this. Chu Jinfeng, I didn't expect your intuition to be so accurate. Jing Tanlang could not help but say. Chu Jinfeng's face also flashed with a strong sense of surprise. Although he chose to believe Bewitching, he did not believe that Bewitching's intuition was accurate from the bottom of his heart. He just regarded Bewitching as a brother, so he did not want to disrespect Bewitching. However, all of this was actually accurate. At this moment, Chu Jinfeng felt a little unbelievable. Bewitching, a newcomer who had never seen a skeleton army, actually had such an intuition. Ren Zimei also looked at Chu Jinfeng in surprise and said, Chu Jinfeng, although I have no interest in eating with you, but seeing that your hunch is very accurate, I will eat with you. But first of all, you have to survive. Hearing this, Chu Jinfeng laughed loudly. Don't worry, we will definitely eat this meal. The moment the rustling sound was heard, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others felt the ground soften. Then, skeleton arms stretched out from the ground, as if they wanted to directly break everyone's feet. Seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately rushed out. Fortunately, they were already mentally prepared. The rustling sound was extremely soft. If they had not been paying attention before, just a few words of conversation would have been enough to cover this sound. However, everyone was already prepared, so no one was hit. Damn it! This skeleton army has now set foot in our place. It is probably impossible to find a safe place here in the future. There is no safe place in this training ground. These disgusting guys are everywhere like cockroaches. They are extremely disgusting. Compared to the people who already knew about it, the eyes of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were completely attracted by the skeletons that suddenly appeared from the ground. Even if they had heard about the appearance of the skeletons before, now that they had seen it with their own eyes, they still felt an unspeakable sense of shock. In their line of sight, the white skeletons with a little bit of black gas and 2 red flames flashed in their eyes. At this moment, they were constantly attacking everyone. Skeletons kept crawling out from the ground, like corpses crawling out of a mass grave. They could even hear the sound of bones moving, which was really shocking under the moonlight. These monsters look really scary. Shengguan Yingying's face was filled with shock. A skeleton that could move had really refreshed her understanding of it. Now that she saw it with her own eyes, she only felt that all of this was like a nightmare. It made her hair stand on end. Even though the 4 of them were filled with indescribable shock, their speed was very fast. Their sharp swords had already appeared in their hands, and without hesitation, they attacked the attacking skeleton. Chapter 3441. Chu Jinfeng reminded Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 as he fought with the skeleton army. These ordinary skeletons aren't strong, but they're like locusts. Their numbers are shocking and they can take a beating, so we have to destroy their spiritual fire as quickly as possible. After the skeleton army appears, a skeleton general might appear. Once the general appears, retreat immediately and leave it to us. Do you understand? At this moment, Chu Jinfeng had already put away his usual joking expression. His handsome face was full of solemnity and seriousness. The appearance of this skeleton army was never a joke. Although there were many cultivators in their team, most of them were injured. If they were not careful, they could lose their lives. Understood. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 responded in unison. Ding ding ding. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the skeleton that was charging towards her. Her ink-black phoenix eyes flashed with a cold and deep light. She attacked with the colored glazed sword in her hand without hesitation. However, after exchanging blows with the skeleton, her eyes could not help but flash with a hint of surprise because the strength of the skeleton had exceeded her expectations. It had just reached the Purple Realm, but its strength was comparable to a 3rd or 4th level Purple Realm cultivator. If it was a high-level skeleton, its strength would be even more terrifying. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but think of Jing Tianlong's leg injury. He must have been caught off guard and broken his leg with such a strong force. Bailey Hongzhuang subconsciously looked in Jing Tianlong's direction. He had already broken a leg, so it was extremely inconvenient for him to fight now. She then realized that Ren Ziheng was carrying Jing Tianlang on his back. There were other cultivators around them, forming a small circle to deal with the skeletons that appeared around them. Although Jing Tianlang was injured, he and Ren Ziheng worked together to fight the skeletons. Obviously, the Inner Palace disciples were used to helping each other. There was a certain level of tacit understanding between them. Bailey Hongzhuang held the colored glazed sword in her hand and channeled her primary energy into it. After receiving Chu Jinfeng's reminder, she no longer wasted time fighting the skeleton. Instead, she attacked the skeleton's head directly. As long as the flame was dealt with, the skeleton would fall down and never stand up again. During the fight, she also realized that no matter if the skeleton's arm or leg was broken, it would quickly recover and connect the bones again. Such an eerie and strange scene was really creepy. Most importantly, Bailey Hongzhuang realized that the area of the ground was softening was constantly expanding. Although they had dealt with many skeletons, the number of skeletons that appeared from the ground seemed to be endless. Moreover, the number seemed to be increasing. "Oh my God, how many skeletons are coming?" Xiron was astonished when he saw the number of skeletons that were continuously emerging from the ground, and skeletons' number was still increasing. Chapter 3442. More and more. When Xiron couldn't help but frown, to what extent? Although Ren Zihang and others also introduced a lot of things about the skeleton army to them before, everyone just mentioned it briefly and didn't tell them too much in detail. According to his judgment, he was afraid that Ren Zihang and others were worried that they would be afraid of the skeleton army after knowing too much and would not be willing to join the inner hall in the future. Everyone calls these guys locusts. Can you imagine what kind of realm it is? Ren Zihang said aloud. Hearing this, Xiron's eyes flashed with a touch of fear. He already knew that the number of the skeleton army would be far beyond his imagination. Newcomers, you have to save some physical strength. These skeleton army will not leave until dawn, so you have to be prepared for a long-term battle. Jing Tianlang reminded. As soon as these words came out, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three couldn't help but look at each other. They also understood the general situation in their hearts. So far, it had only been a few minutes, but there were already so many skeletons in the army. Now, it was just nightfall, and there were still a few hours before dawn. Just thinking about this number, it was already a huge existence. Oh my God, there are so many skeletons. No wonder they are called locusts. Shangguan Yingying exclaimed out loud. She still felt a little incredulous. The moonlight sprinkled on the ground, adding a touch of silver to the black ground. The ground where Bailey Hongzhuang and others were before seemed to have turned into a swamp. Skeletons crawled out of it one after another. The eerie white bones had a bit of a terrifying aura, and the fiery red spiritual fire was even more indescribably strange. The sound of bones cracking could be heard from the skeletons. Some of the skeletons even had their legs broken by the other skeletons while they were walking. However, these skeletons didn't feel any pain at all. They just numbly reattached the bones to their bodies. Sometimes they even reattached the bones to their bodies, but these skeletons were unaware of it. The whole land seemed to have sunk into a gloomy and cold atmosphere. The huge number of skeletons kept increasing. The 40 disciples of Penglai Palace looked weak among the hundreds and thousands of skeletons. It was a good thing that everyone's cultivation was very strong. Dazzling origin energy burst out continuously, and the skeleton quickly fell down. For now, these skeletons did not pose much of a threat to everyone. However, the solemn expression on everyone's faces did not change. This was because they knew that this was only a temporary respite. As the battle dragged on, the number of skeletons would increase, and once their strength weakened, the chances of them getting injured would greatly increase. Master, isn't the number of skeletons a little too terrifying? Xiao Hei's eyes were filled with astonishment. Just how many skeletons are there here? Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. She was also very surprised by this. This place should be a gathering place for the undead. Perhaps it used to be a mass grave. Such an existence is really strange. I find it hard to imagine how such a place could exist. Chapter 3443. According to what Ren Zihang and the others had said, the number of skeletons they had dealt with every day was not small. But even under such circumstances, there were still so many skeletons. This was a little too shocking. The world is so big, nothing is too strange. Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang had their backs against each other as they dealt with the skeletons that were constantly rushing towards them. These eerie white skeletons, coupled with their strange appearance and faint sinister laughter, made them want to bury all of these guys in the ground for a long time. I've really learned something this time. Even after death, they can still maintain such a fighting strength. This is enough to prove that these skeletons were very strong when they were alive. Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her phoenix eyes. When she thought of the underlying reason, she felt very scared. Experts were indeed experts. Even after death, they still had such a terrifying fighting strength. With so many experts, I really don't understand why they would die in a place like this. Bewitching also had some doubts in his heart. Generally, experts who had reached this level of cultivation would die in a grand manner. Many experts would choose to pass on their skills before they died. This was the origin of the ancient ruins. Of course, some experts who were killed directly did not have the time to prepare all of this. However, the strength of the skeletons here was so strong that it could be assumed that none of them were simple. It was really shocking that all of them had died here. There must be a reason. It's just that we haven't come into contact with that level yet. Bailey Hongzhuang's willowy eyebrows twitched slightly. There was still a trace of pondering between her eyebrows. The Shengxian continent of 1,000 years ago had obviously changed a lot compared to 1,000 years later. However, she had not found any accurate records in the books before. Thinking about it, the appearance of these skeletons must have been in the middle of the years. At least, she did not have any contact with these skeletons at that time. Bewitching nodded slightly. We will know one day. While Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching were talking, the number of skeletons under their feet was constantly increasing. Compared to the efficiency of the other disciples, their efficiency in dealing with the skeletons was not slow. Bai Shi, Xiao He, and Xiao Bai did not make a move because Bailey Hongzhuang had realized that it was useless no matter how many skeletons they killed. Their real goal was to persevere and fight until dawn. This was going to be a protracted battle because the number of skeletons was not something they could deal with in a short period of time. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and White Lion were saving some energy now. When the time came, they would have a chance to catch their breaths. The three newly born little fellows were also staying in the Chaos Ring. Although they really wanted to help their master in battle, their current strength was still a little too weak. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had prepared a lot of food to feed the three newly born contracted beasts. Because the three contracted beasts' ranks were already very high, their cultivation was not low when they were born. However, it would still take some time to nurture them to the point where they could fight side by side with Bewitching and the others. It was because the higher the rank of a contracted beast, the higher the starting point. Therefore, the time needed to feed them would be reduced by a lot. This was why countless experts would scramble for high-ranked contracted beasts. In comparison, Bai Shi was a special existence. Chapter 3444. Bailey Hongzhuang had also asked White Lion about this. Perhaps it was because White Lion's growth had countless possibilities, so it needed to rely on its own strength to cultivate step by step. It was precisely because of this that there were very few beast kings. If they did not have good luck during their growth process, then they might be in danger when they were very weak. Although it could exude the aura of a beast king and make ordinary monsters not dare to approach, it could be said that any problem could happen during its growth process, so everything was uncertain. Ren Ziheng and the others were originally very worried that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three would not be able to deal with these skeletons that suddenly appeared because these skeletons were not only numerous, but their combat strength was also not bad. Even if these skeletons could no longer use any martial arts after they died, their original strength was still there, so it was not easy to deal with them. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were just newcomers who had just joined the Penglai Palace. Their strength was only at the 5th level of the Purple Realm. Although they were stronger than these skeletons, it was still not easy to deal with such a large number of skeletons. However, after some observation, they found that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three did not have the slightest difficulty when facing the skeletons. On the contrary, their speed of dealing with the skeletons was not much slower than the senior disciples. Seeing this scene, everyone's eyes could not help but light up, and they were surprised. I really didn't see that junior brother D and the others' combat strength was not bad. When I first came to this training ground and encountered these skeletons, I couldn't help but be flustered. I didn't expect them to adapt so well. Chu Jinfeng's eyes were filled with amazement and admiration. He had long felt that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three would definitely become a member of the Penglai Inner Palace in the future, but their current performance had already made him very satisfied. Jing Tianlang took the opportunity to take a look and then nodded. These 4 newcomers' abilities are indeed not bad. It seems that the newcomers nowadays are really stronger than the previous. Since they have such combat strength, we don't need to worry for a short time. I just hope that there won't be any other annoying guys. Ren Ziheng's eyes narrowed slightly. He had originally thought that he would be able to return after spending these 2 days safely, but he hadn't expected that something like this would happen today. Now, the only thing he could hope for was that only the skeleton army would appear tonight, and nothing else would appear. Otherwise, their team would definitely suffer a lot of damage. I don't think so. Renzime frowned. This is the outer area. Normally, there are not many skeleton armies. It's just that we happen to encounter one. If something else were to appear, then our luck would be too bad. Of course not. Chu Jinfeng smiled faintly. I'm still waiting to treat you to a meal when we get back. Renzime faintly glanced at Chu Jinfeng. You'd better be careful when facing the enemy. If you're not careful, you'll have to stay in bed to recuperate. Hearing Renzime's words, Chu Jinfeng couldn't help but grin. Zime, I know you care about me the most. Don't try to take advantage of me with your words. Renzime said coldly. Chapter 34:45. Seeing how fast Chu Jinfeng dodged, Renzime could not help but snort. She could only let it go for now. Don't joke around at a time like this. Be serious. I felt that something was wrong when the skeleton army suddenly appeared here today. Anything can happen in the future. We can't let our guard down. Ren Ziheng was undoubtedly much more mature and steady. Ever since the appearance of this skeleton army, his brows had been tightly knitted. He felt that the skeleton army's appearance today was a little strange. One had to know that this was the outer area of the training ground. Usually, the skeleton army would rarely appear. That was why they had set this place as a place for injured disciples to recuperate. However, an army of skeletons suddenly appeared here today. Could it be that the range of skeletons was constantly expanding? Or was it because the skeleton army also had their own consciousness and knew that they would be staying here, so they deliberately came to cause trouble? Between the two possibilities, no matter which one it was, Ren Ziheng did not think it was a good thing. He only hoped that he had guessed wrong and the skeleton army's sudden appearance this time was just a coincidence. Hearing Ren Ziheng's words, Renzime and the others stopped joking. In fact, they had never felt relaxed. Every time the skeleton army appeared, there would be a certain number of casualties. As cultivators who had recovered from their injuries, they needed to take care of the injured disciples. It was their responsibility. Countless skeletons kept climbing out from the ground. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other cultivators seemed to be filled with endless attraction to them. They rushed forward dauntlessly, only wanting to make Bailey Hongzhuang and the others a member of the skeleton army. Yuan power kept pouring out from her body. Her figure flashed and quickly dealt with the skeletons in front of her. Vaguely, the skeletons also exerted a certain amount of pressure on her. This was because there were too many skeletons. They did not seem to be fast, but once they were surrounded, the skeletons' hands continuously tore at their bodies. The slightest bit of carelessness would leave behind wounds. Therefore, under such circumstances, they had to speed up their attacks. Once the skeletons got close to them, the situation would only get worse. I finally know why the Inner Palace disciples would be injured by these skeletons despite having such a high cultivation base. There are simply too many of them. One must be fast enough to kill them all. However, after an entire night, anyone who reached the end would feel tired. As long as they were slightly careless and got injured, the situation would only get worse and worse. In the end, they would be drowned by the skeleton army. Just thinking about it was an extremely torturous scene. It was especially hard for anyone to accept dying in this kind of despair. A helpless expression appeared on Shangguan Yingying's face. I feel like we've returned to the scene a month ago when we were besieged by over 200 Outer Palace disciples. I just said that I don't want to experience that feeling again. I didn't expect it to happen again so soon. Hearing Shangguan Yingying's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two looked at each other. The scene in front of them was exactly the same as what they had experienced before. However, at that time, they could still hope that Master Long and the others would appear quickly. But in this training ground, they could not count on anything. The only thing they could count on was themselves. Chapter 34:46. From this situation, we can see why the disciples of the Inner Palace are so powerful. If it were anyone else who had to fight like this every night, the speed of their strength improvement would not be slow. Xiron clicked his tongue. Before witnessing this scene with his own eyes, he had never thought that the training ground of the inner palace would be so terrifying. It was a little too shocking. The intensity of the training was simply regardless of whether the cultivator could withstand it. Those who could withstand it would become stronger and stronger. Those who could not withstand it would only end up dying there. Not only that, the reason why the relationship between the disciples of the inner palace is so trusting and harmonious is also inseparable from this group battle. Everyone relies on each other in life and death, so naturally, they would put aside all the conflicts, Bewitching said in a deep voice. Although he had yet to go to the training grounds of the Outer Palace disciples, he believed that the training grounds of the Outer Palace disciples were definitely not as dangerous as this place. Only a small team would be needed to deal with any problems. Hence, the conflicts between the Outer Palace disciples and the Outer Palace disciples were endless. While they were talking, the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were not idle at all. In the process of fighting, they gradually gained some understanding of the fighting style of the skeletons. When they acted, their eyes and hands were sharp and their hands were fast, quickly harvesting the spiritual fire of the skeletons. However, gradually, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others heard that the movements coming from all around them were getting louder and louder. When they took a closer look, they realized that not only were there skeletons constantly drilling out of the ground in front of them, but there were also skeletons that were beginning to appear around them. Sensing their vitality, the skeletons were also constantly approaching. This situation doesn't seem right. The number of skeletons seems to be increasing. Why are there suddenly so many skeletons around us? Are they trying to surround us? Damn it, this place is usually safe. Why are there suddenly so many skeletons? And from the sound of it, it seems to be increasing. After hearing the sounds, the disciples of the inner palace seemed to understand the situation. Although the movements of the skeletons were loud, the footsteps were very heavy, and they could faintly hear the crisp sound of bones. At this moment, the sounds were clearly coming from all directions. With their daily combat experience, the number of skeletons was definitely not small. The faces of Ren Ziheng and the others quickly changed. They immediately shouted, "Everyone, gather together first. This place is too dangerous. We have to think of a way to escape." They knew very well how terrifying the impact of the locust-like skeleton army was. Once they were surrounded, they would only end up being swallowed. Now that they had not figured out the specific situation, they could no longer stay on their own. Only by gathering together would they have a higher chance of survival. Hearing Ren Ziheng's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did not delay. While clearing the skeletons along the way, they approached Ren Ziheng and the others' direction. The number of skeletons is indeed increasing. Just by listening to the commotion, I'm afraid that a few more holes like this have appeared in the surroundings. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was very dignified. The skeletons that appeared in this pit were already enough to make them tired. If there were more, then the situation would be very bad. Chapter 3447. According to Chu Jinfeng, it wasn't that the appearance of multiple pits had never happened before. It was just that the probability was very small, and the last time it happened, it could be said that they suffered heavy losses. None of them expected such a situation to happen in the periphery today. Just thinking about it gave Bewitching a bad premonition. In the face of such a large skeleton army, they might really be drowned by it. Soon, the inner palace disciples had gathered together. Fortunately, the skeletons had not appeared for long, so everyone was in good condition. Even if they were injured, it was only a minor injury. Ren Ziheng, I feel that something is wrong. I'm afraid there are skeletons coming from all directions. We have to find a way to escape. If we continue to stay here, I'm afraid it's not good. Jing Tianlong's face was solemn. The current situation was not a joke. If they were not careful, they would be wiped out. Ren Ziheng nodded. But with our current position, we can't determine which direction is the safe way to escape. Currently, everyone was in a concave area. There were no trees around, so they could not determine the situation of the skeletons above. They could only make a judgment after understanding the situation. Who has a flying contracted beast? Fly up and take a look. Help us check out the path of retreat. Jing Tianlang shouted. Many of the inner palace disciples had their own contract beasts, but everyone's plan was the same as Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. They did not intend to release their contract beasts before. They would only release their contract beasts when they were about to be unable to hold on any longer. This often gave them a chance to breathe. However, after hearing Jing Tianlang's words, the disciples present could not help but look at each other in dismay. They did have contracted beasts, but flying contracted beasts were very rare among all contracted beasts. They did not have such a contracted beast. After seeing everyone's expression, Jing Tianlang and the others could not help but look terrible. If they did not have a flying contracted beast to help them check the direction, they could only rely on luck. If they made a mistake, they might directly walk into the center of the skeleton army. That would be terrible. At this time, Bewitching said, "Wait, my contracted beast can check the situation." Hearing Bewitching's words, everyone could not help but be startled. They did not expect Bewitching, who was just a newcomer, to have a contracted beast with the ability to fly. Obviously, it was beyond everyone's expectations. In the next second, the mystical fire devil rock flew into the air under Bewitching's signal. Its gray body with some red light attracted everyone's attention. Seeing Bewitching's contracted beast, the discerning cultivators immediately recognized the type of contracted beast. Mystical fire devil rock. It's a mystical fire devil rock. My God, the mysterious fire monster rock is the best of the best among the contracted beasts. Even in the entire inner temple, there is only one person who has a mysterious fire monster rock. I did not expect that the newcomer Bewitching would have a mysterious fire monster rock as his contracted beast. Chapter 34-48. Everyone's eyes lit up the moment they saw the dark fire monstrous rock. Among all the contracted beasts that cultivators were looking forward to, the dark fire monstrous rock was definitely one of the top few contracted beasts. Not only did the dark fire monstrous rock have the ability to fly, but it was also very powerful in battle. Moreover, it had great potential for development and could grow alongside the cultivator. However, the dark fire monstrous rock was rarely seen, let alone a cub of the dark fire monstrous rock. Almost every cultivator who had a dark fire monstrous rock was an object of jealousy. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also knew how rare it was to have a contracted beast of the dark fire monstrous rock. Its appearance had attracted everyone's attention. Fortunately, the berserk earth-splitting tiger and the deep-sea demonic dragon were not released. Otherwise, everyone would be scared to death. Xiaohei could not help but say. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. In comparison, if you and Baisher were released, everyone would be even more shocked. The dark fire monstrous rock's grade was extremely high, so it was naturally difficult to see it on a normal day. However, contracted beasts that had reached Purple Realm Level 5 and Purple Realm Level 6 were even rarer. After all, it wasn't an easy task to nurture a contract beast. The amount of energy and expenditure required was terrifying. Although the dark fire monstrous rock had just been born, it was already very close to Bewitching. When it knew that Bewitching was busy fighting, it had already wanted to come out and help. However, it never had the chance. Now that it finally had the chance to show off, it was naturally very happy. The dark fire monstrous rock rose into the air. After looking around, it truthfully reported the situation to Bewitching. After hearing the dark fire monstrous rock's report, Bewitching's expression suddenly turned ugly. Ren Ziheng and the others saw the change in Bewitching's expression and could not help but ask, "Junior brother D, what's the result?" There are 4 similar pits around us, and these skeletons are continuously crawling out of them. We are currently at the center of these pits. Bewitching's expression was grave. We must retreat as soon as possible. If we delay any longer, we will be surrounded. Even if they were to retreat now, it would be very difficult for them to do so because the speed at which the skeletons were emerging was simply too fast. Following Bewitching's words, everyone's hearts sank. Adding the 4 craters to the current one, there were a total of 5 craters. Normally, they were already exhausted from dealing with one pothole. Now that there were 5 potholes, they were completely dead. Then which direction should we retreat in? Bewitching pointed in a direction and said, "This way." The potholes here are the first to appear, and the pressure to evacuate from here is the lowest. We have to speed up. Ren Ziheng nodded. Zimei, Chu Jinfeng, the three of us will open up a path in front. Don't be stingy with the adaptation of your essence force. We must open up a path as quickly as possible. Understood. The rest of you, follow closely behind us and pay attention to the surroundings. Understood. Jing Tianlang, you guys follow behind the three of us. Once the three of us run out of essence force, you guys immediately replace us. No problem. Chapter 3449. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were newcomers. Even though they had shown good fighting strength, the Inner Palace disciples had always taken it upon themselves to protect their juniors. After all, their cultivation was the weakest in the team. Therefore, the four of them were arranged to be in the center of the team, which was the safest position. Ren Ziheng, Ren Zimei, and Chu Jinfeng were at the front with all their might. The elemental energy in their bodies surged out endlessly as they unleashed their martial skills one after another. Previously, everyone wanted to conserve their elemental energy, so the battle waves were not big. Now that they did not plan to conserve their elemental energy, every time they unleashed a martial skill, it would cause a large area of destruction. Once they unleashed their skills, they would directly clear the obstacles in front of them. Under such circumstances, everyone's speed of retreat was extremely fast. The light kept flashing as the 40 over people gathered together and moved forward rapidly. The skeletons behind them were also constantly chasing after them. The cultivators at the back of the team were also under a lot of pressure. While clearing the obstacles in front of them, they also needed to clear the obstacles behind them. Throughout the entire process, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also noticed the tacit understanding between everyone. From the beginning to the end, Ren Ziheng only said a few simple words and everyone completed the process of retreat very well. It was as if they had done this many times before. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three followed the team from beginning to end. From time to time, they would take care of the skeletons that appeared around them. Their path of retreat was already very difficult. They had to pass through the two new pits that appeared. Only then could they find a safe place behind them and concentrate on dealing with the skeleton army. As long as the back was safe, at least they still had a glimmer of hope. However, the number of skeletons that appeared next was a shock to everyone. The number was a little too terrifying. Even though Ren Ziheng and the others' speed of clearing the skeletons was already very fast, the waves of skeletons were even more terrifying. The skeletons in the 6 pits gathered together, it was simply thousands of them. Most importantly, they realized that the ground under their feet was gradually softening, as if it would turn into a swamp at any time. Suddenly, a scream came from behind Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang turned around and only then did she realize that a cultivator was directly pulled into the swamp-like ground by the skeletons. How could this be? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be stunned, but her reaction speed was also extremely fast. She and Bewitching acted almost at the same time, directly grabbing the hands of the practitioner and pulling him out of the swamp. Rip! A tearing sound accompanied by a heart-wrenching scream suddenly sounded. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching found that the cultivator's legs had been directly pulled off. Taking a closer look, they could see the bloody legs in the pit being held by the skeleton's arm. Seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face quickly surged with shock. This was simply too terrifying. Bewitching didn't hesitate to carry the cultivator on his back. He said to Bailey Hongzhuang, "Let's go quickly. This land is going to change soon." Chapter 3450. After flying for some distance, Bailey Hongzhuang finally stepped on solid ground again. When she turned around, she found that behind them, the swamp had gradually turned into a new pit. Oh my God, this is too terrifying. We are going to be completely surrounded. Shangguan Yingying's face was full of fear. The sudden scene before made her feel a little scared. This was really too terrifying. At this moment, she finally understood why Ren Ziheng and the others said that it was best not to see the skeleton army. Because once they saw it, they might not be able to see tomorrow's sun again. How can this be? Why are there so many pits? Chu Jinfeng couldn't help but curse. Even if he had stayed in this training ground for a long time, it was the first time that so many pits suddenly appeared. This was completely not giving them any chance to survive. I don't know what is going on either. This has never happened before. Rin Ziheng was also a little stunned. Usually, there would only be one pit in each place. He didn't expect that all the pits would gather here today. Judging from this trend, they were doomed. An indescribable pressure spread in everyone's hearts. None of them were fools. Under such a situation, they were basically left with only one possibility, and that was death. However, none of them were willing to say this out loud. It was as if as long as they said it, they would completely lose all hope. It's useless to think about that now. Let's do our best to escape. We'll hold on for as long as we can. As long as we can hold on until dawn, we'll be victorious, Rin Zimei said in a low voice. However, there was a hint of misery in her voice. These words were only meant to comfort himself. That's right. We can't give up until the last moment. There is always a way out. Rin Ziheng nodded. Everyone was still retreating quickly. If they didn't leave this area quickly, they would really die. In the process of evacuation, the number of injured practitioners was constantly increasing. Bewitching was always carrying an injured practitioner, and Bailey Hongzhuang was also supporting another injured person. A tragic atmosphere was quietly spreading. Rin Ziheng and the others were trying their best to open a path. Everyone understood that whether they could survive or not depended on whether they could rush out or not. Finally, when Rin Ziheng and the others Yuan Qi was almost exhausted, they successfully walked to a safer area. In front of them, there was a cave, and the cave entrance was very narrow. It could only accommodate a few practitioners standing here. After seeing the cave, Rin Ziheng and the others' eyes couldn't help but light up. He said, "Everyone, quickly enter the cave." Bailey Hongzhuang and the others rushed into the cave, and the injured practitioners finally got a chance to catch their breath. There is still a long time before dawn. The only thing we can do is to guard the entrance of the cave. As long as we don't let these skeletons enter the cave, we will have a chance to survive. Rin Ziheng's face was solemn and serious. This was the biggest challenge he had encountered when protecting the injured disciples. Chapter 3451. Upon hearing Rin Ziheng's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other and agreed. Based on the current situation, this was the best way. Only then would they have a chance of survival. Every Inner Palace disciple was not weak. As long as every cultivator held on for a certain amount of time, the other cultivators would quickly recover their origin energy. They could still hold on until dawn. Let's do that. Jing Tianlang nodded. The three of you have been leading the way for so long. You've used up a lot of your origin energy. It's our turn now. Upon hearing Jing Tianlang's words, Rin Ziheng thought about his current situation and did not force himself. Alright, you guys hold on for a while. After saying that, Rin Ziheng found a place to sit down in the cave and began to consume pills to recover his origin energy. Under such circumstances, having sufficient origin energy was undoubtedly the most important thing. Bailey Hongzhuang had already consumed pills to replenish her origin energy. Rin Zimei began to arrange for the next round of cultivators to continue guarding the cave. She included all the cultivators who had combat strength. Not long after, Rin Zimei's gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. When the time comes, the four of you will fight the skeleton army together. Are you confident? If not, I'll arrange for you to fight with the other senior brothers and senior sisters. In such a situation, as long as you have some combat strength, you have to use it. You understand, right? Rin Zimei was a little helpless. Logically speaking, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were newcomers and did not have much experience in dealing with the skeleton army. As their senior sister, she had previously said that she would protect them well. However, they were now forced to face the difficulties. Although the Inner Palace disciples' cultivation was stronger than Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, they were originally a gathering of injured people. Their combat strength was not comparable to their peak. In comparison, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were in the best condition in their team. Senior Sister Ren, don't worry. The four of us won't have a problem. Bailey Hongzhuang said. Although the skeleton army was terrifying, the cultivation of the 4 of them was not bad. As long as they stood at the entrance of the cave, they could still do it. Renzime smiled when she saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were not afraid of death at all. On the contrary, they were very cooperative. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were undoubtedly much better than the Outer Palace's cultivators who had no ability and were arrogant. It was no wonder that everyone was so close to them. That's good. Anyway, we're all in the cave. If you can't hold on, we'll go and help you. Thank you, senior sister. Bailey Hongzhuang circulated her heaven-defying mental cultivation method to recover the elemental energy in her body. She held 2 spirit stones in her hands, which was the only way for her to recover quickly. Her cultivation technique was originally of the highest grade, so her speed of recovering essence energy was much faster than ordinary cultivators. Although Bewitching's cultivation technique was not as good as Bailey Hongzhuang's, he was now a heavenly mandate body. The speed of his elemental energy absorption was also very shocking. After spending some time, Bailey Hongzhuang's elemental energy had recovered to its peak state. This was also because her elemental energy consumption was not large. After opening her eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but look at the situation outside the cave. Chapter 3452. At a glance, the outside of the cave was densely packed with eerie white bones. The bright red flames that leaped about were indescribably eerie. From afar, the red flames looked as if they were burning the entire area. Jing Tianlang and the others had already been replaced. At this moment, it was the other 3 Inner Palace disciples' turn to resist the advance of the skeletons. Outside the cave, the skeletons' bones had already piled up into a mountain. Faced with such a large number of skeletons, they had no other choice but to use their martial skills. Relying on their own strength, they would not be able to deal with the endless stream of skeletons. Once the skeletons broke through their line of defense, their companions behind them would suffer. Therefore, the 3 cultivators took turns to use their martial skills. Every time a cultivator used a martial skill, the other 2 cultivators would hold onto spiritual stones in their hands and try to recover as much of their yuan power as possible. Moreover, everyone had a tacit understanding. They did not immediately use their martial skills after one of them had finished using his martial skills. Instead, they waited for more skeletons to charge before continuing to use their martial skills. Although it did not seem like much time had passed, as long as they accumulated the time, they would at least be able to withstand a few more waves of attacks. As long as they could hold on long enough, they would have the hope of leaving this place alive. After Bailey Hongzhuang saw the methodical attack of the Inner Palace disciples, she couldn't help but feel admiration in her heart. However, the terrifying number of skeletons still made people's hearts heavy. Junior Sister Bailey, have you recovered your yuan power? Renzime could not help but ask when she saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had stood up. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded when she heard that. I've recovered. Then, Junior Sister, do you still have any healing medicine on you? Everyone's injuries are quite serious. Given the current situation, Renzime was a little helpless and found it hard to speak. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang had joined their team, they had taken advantage of Bailey Hongzhuang. Just the healing medicine that Bailey Hongzhuang had given them would be worth a lot if they were to sell it. Now that she had asked Bailey Hongzhuang for help, even she felt that she had gone overboard. However, under such circumstances, she had no other choice. I still have some healing medicine here. Everyone, please use it first. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood and said, I was planning to bandage everyone's wounds anyway. Junior Sister Bailey will definitely return these to you when we get back. Renzime could not help but speak up. Bailey Hongzhuang's understanding made her heaved a sigh of relief. However, they could not openly take advantage of Bailey Hongzhuang just because she did not bicker. She only thought of returning to Bailey Hongzhuang when they got back. Senior Sister Ren, Bailey Hongzhuang's. Bailey, 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 Bailey. Furthermore, these are just healing medicine and not some amazing treasure. I only hope that everyone can hold on until dawn arrives. The current situation was so unfavorable. As long as these injured cultivators could recover a little, It meant that their chances of survival would increase. Chapter 3453. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's sensible appearance, Renzime's gaze changed a little. Then, she patted Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder and said, "As long as we can survive until tomorrow, you will be my good sister in the future." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "We will definitely survive." Then, Bailey Hongzhuang began to bandage the wounds of the injured cultivators. They had already done some simple treatment before, but for some of the more serious injuries, everyone could only endure it. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell on the cultivator whose legs were directly torn off. At this moment, his wounds were still bleeding, and his face had become very pale. After taking a closer look, Bailey Hongzhuang knew that he had already taken healing elixirs and blood-replenishing elixirs. He would not lose his life, but the process was very painful. If it were not for the fact that the injuries were left by the skeleton, and there were still some black gas around the edges of the wounds, which constantly suppressed the healing of the wounds, the cultivator's current situation would be much better. Bailey Hongzhuang sprinkled the healing elixirs on the cultivator's wounds, and used silver needles to help the cultivator poke a few acupuncture points, alleviating some of his pain. As long as they could endure through tonight and be safe tomorrow, the cultivator would be able to grow new legs after returning to Penglai Palace and taking the elixir for bone regeneration. However, he would need some new adaptation process in the process. After seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang realized that she had to prepare more elixirs for bone regeneration in the future. Although they were often injured, such serious injuries were rare. However, in the training ground of the Inner Palace disciples, this kind of situation happened too frequently. "Junior Sister Bailey, thank you very much." The cultivator could not help but thank Bailey Hongzhuang after feeling that his pain had lessened a little. "Senior brother, you are welcome. Not only do I want to thank you for bandaging my wounds, but I also want to thank you and Junior Brother D for saving my life. If you didn't pull me up, I would be dead now." The man sighed. He was so close to losing his life. Compared to that, his current injuries were nothing. "We're teammates. That's what we should do." At this moment, D. Beichen had already walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. His elemental energy had already recovered, but based on the current situation, it would not be long before they had to make a move. "I will remember this kindness in my heart. If you need my help in the future, just let me know." The other injured disciples nodded after hearing the man's words. Although they didn't say it out loud, they had already decided in their hearts that if Bailey Hongzhuang and the others needed help in the future, they would definitely not refuse. When Bailey Hongzhuang was helping to bandage the wounds, D. Beichen went to Bailey Hongzhuang's side to help. It wasn't that he hadn't helped Bailey Hongzhuang with this kind of thing before. The more times he did it, the more proficient he became at it now. After Bailey Hongzhuang roughly treated the injuries of the injured disciples, the people who took over the battle became them. Chapter 3454. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's replacement, the cultivators who were previously holding on quickly retreated and sat aside to recover their yuan qi using spirit stones. At this level of cultivation, everyone had a lot of yuan qi stored in their bodies. However, to deal with the skeleton army, they had to use powerful martial skills to achieve good results. Therefore, the consumption of their yuan qi was extremely fast. Facing the densely packed skeletons in front of him, when Xiren couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. I really couldn't imagine such a scene even in my dreams. It's hard for me to imagine being drowned by these disgusting fellows. Even though they had faced many situations of being surrounded before, the scene in front of them was undoubtedly the most disgusting one. The consequences of being surrounded were also the most unbearable. "Let's take turns to use martial skills. Every moment counts," D. Beichen said in a deep voice. Their goal was not to clear the numerous skeletons in front of them, but to delay until dawn. However, the night seemed to be exceptionally long. They had never felt that the night was so difficult to pass. Boom! As soon as Bailey Hongzhuang used her martial skill, a huge vacuum area appeared in front of them. All the skeletons that rushed forward were swept away in an instant. However, the skeletons behind did not feel anything and continued to charge forward. Skeletons were inanimate objects. They did not have any spiritual consciousness and only had the instinct to fight. Therefore, no matter how many skeletons fell in front of them, it did not affect them at all. The four of them had always been fighting together, so their coordination was extremely good. When they took turns to use their martial skills, they found the martial skill that had the best effect and saved the most yuan qi. In such a time of a race against time, as long as they could hold on for a little longer, it would be good. Big brother, how are you guys recovering? Ren Zimei looked at Ren Ziheng with a hint of worry in her eyes. They only had a total of more than 40 cultivators, and the number of cultivators who were seriously injured was not small. In total, there were only 10 waves of people who could withstand the attack. However, there were simply too many skeletons. Even though they were rich in essence energy, each wave of skeletons couldn't last for very long. Under such circumstances, the longer they lasted, the less essence energy they could recover. Therefore, the frequency of them constantly changing people increased. After a few more rounds like this, the situation would become even worse. Hearing Ren Zimei's words, Ren Ziheng opened his eyes. His handsome face carried a grave and worried expression. I've recovered quite a bit, but there's still a certain distance before I can fully recover. In reality, with their current circumstances, it was utterly impossible for them to completely recover their origin energy. Ren Zimei nodded. In her heart, she had a certain understanding of the situation. At this time, it was better for them not to say such words to destroy everyone's confidence. At this time, Ren Ziheng looked at the situation at the entrance of the cave and found that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were resisting the attacks of the skeletons. He took a closer look and found that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had a tacit understanding of each other. Moreover, the effect of this attack was not bad. He could not help but have a look of admiration in his eyes. Chapter 3455. Ren Ziheng nodded his head. Previously, there had been cultivators from the outer palace who had accidentally stumbled upon them. However, these outer palace disciples did not have sufficient strength and thought highly of themselves. Hence, they did not pay any attention to Ren Ziheng's advice. Under such circumstances, these outer palace disciples would often suffer the consequences of their own actions and lose their lives in the end. As senior brothers and sisters, the most they could do was give them some moral advice. However, if the other party was unwilling to pay attention to them, they would naturally not care. After all, their lives were their own. They had no obligation to protect the outer palace disciples. In comparison, they did not see any arrogance in Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. On the contrary, they were very humble. Just this point alone was enough to give them a good impression. Speaking of which, this time, the four of them had accidentally stumbled into this cave and helped us a lot. However, this is not good luck for them. Ren Ziheng shook his head and sighed. Although he had always said that they would definitely be able to hold on until tomorrow morning, judging from the current situation outside the cave, it was not very optimistic. Even he did not have enough confidence in their ability to hold on until the very last moment. He just could not show it. The fellow who had tricked them is really a little abominable. If we can go back and help teach him a lesson, that would be good too. Ren Zimei raised her eyebrows. Up until now, she had not been able to help Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. If she could help them vent their anger, that would be good too. So, we must hold on until tomorrow morning. Ren Ziheng patted Ren Zimei on the shoulder. Help me take good care of everyone. Ren Zimei nodded. Leave the problem of these injured people to me. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three took turns attacking the skeletons that were constantly charging towards them. Under their battle prowess, the skeletons were destroyed very quickly. In front of their cave, densely packed skeletons had already fallen. However, the army of skeletons in the distance was still in groups and did not seem to have decreased in number. Looking at the scene before them, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could not help but feel that the number of skeletons in the army was just too terrifying. No matter how many skeletons they had destroyed, the army of skeletons in the distance continued to gather. It was as if they would never be able to kill them all. Just looking at it was enough to make one feel exhausted. However, the moonlight was still bright. There was still a long time before dawn. Now, they could no longer hope for the dawn to come quickly. They could only hope that they could hold on for as long as possible. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three seemed to have reached a tacit understanding. They didn't spend any effort to use other martial skills. They just kept using the same one, almost numb. Bailey Hongzhuang sized up the skeletons in front of her. She was really curious as to why these skeletons had become like this and why they still had such combat strength. Along the way, she had also paid attention to the surrounding environment. However, this place was filled with pitch-black soil, and there were very few plants. Originally, according to his judgment, the source of the black gas that wanted to resolve the injuries caused by the skeletons should be these skeletons. Chapter 3456. There weren't any plants growing here, and there was nothing else on these skeletons other than their white bones and liveliness. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't figure it out no matter how hard she thought about it. Was there nothing that could suppress the black gas? According to her understanding, this shouldn't be possible. However, she didn't think too much about it. If it was so easy to discover, the doctors of the 100 Flowers faction would have already found a way to deal with the black gas. Since there wasn't any progress after so long, it proved that this thing was indeed very difficult to find. At the very least, she probably wouldn't be able to find it in a short period of time. If they had the chance to come to the training grounds of the Inner Palace disciples in the future, perhaps she would be able to find a way to deal with it. Ren Ziheng and the others were ready to provide support after seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had held on for a while. However, when they noticed the situation of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, they couldn't help but be surprised. According to their judgment, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were only at the 5th level of the Purple Realm. There was a certain gap between their cultivation base and theirs. Logically speaking, it was already pretty good that they could hold on for so long. However, based on the current situation, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three still had some strength left and hadn't exhausted the Yuan Li in their bodies. Seeing this, Ren Ziheng and the others couldn't help but look at each other. It seems that we've underestimated the fighting strength of our juniors. Chu Jinfeng nodded. The Outer Palace disciples are getting stronger and stronger. If it were me at the 5th level of the Purple Realm, I wouldn't have been able to hold on for so long. Looking at their situation, they should be able to hold on for a while longer. You guys should hurry up and recover more Yuan Li. Ren Zimei couldn't help but say. In this kind of race against time, every moment of perseverance was good. Ren Ziheng and Chu Jinfeng didn't waste any more time and immediately continued to use the spiritual stones to recover their Yuan Li. After a period of time, Ren Ziheng and Chu Jinfeng couldn't help but open their eyes. Both of them had some doubts in their hearts. It had been a while since this incident. According to their judgment, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three shouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. However, until now, they hadn't heard any news of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three wanting to change people. They couldn't help but open their eyes to see what was going on. When they saw this, they couldn't help but be even more surprised. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were still holding on and had no intention of backing down. Judging from the four's performance, Ren Ziheng and the others could see that they were not forcing themselves. Instead, they really had the ability to continue persevering. This made them gasp in amazement. One had to know that even if their cultivation was higher than Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, they could only hold on for so long. Some people couldn't even hold on for so long. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three who were only at the 5th level of the Purple Realm were able to hold on for so long. It was a little too special. At this moment, not only Ren Ziheng and Chu Jinfeng, but even Jing Tianlang and the others couldn't help but be attracted by Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. How did the four of them do it? Chu Jinfeng couldn't help but be stunned. He thought about it and didn't think that cultivators at the 5th level of the Purple Realm could hold on for so long. Chapter 3457. Ren Zimei nodded and carefully observed the situation of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. Not bad, their endurance seems to be stronger than ordinary cultivators. Not only that, if I'm not wrong, they should be strictly controlling the output of their primary power and conserving every bit of it. That's why they're able to achieve this, Jing Tianlang analyzed. He had been paying attention to Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three for a while. He noticed that every time they used their martial skills, their primary power output was basically the same, and the difference was extremely small. This was what shocked him the most. Just this control alone was not something that ordinary people could achieve. Even if his cultivation was stronger than Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, he knew very well that in terms of control, he was definitely not as good as Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest. This kind of problem wasn't obvious on normal days, but when two cultivators of similar strength engaged in a white-hot battle, this difference would be reflected. If he asked himself honestly, if his cultivation was the same as Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, he would definitely be the loser in a life-or-death battle. This was because whether it was endurance or control, he could not compare to them. How did they do it? Renzime could not help but look at Jing Tianling. She had rarely seen such a situation before. Ren Ziheng pondered and said, they should be specially trained in this aspect. Without this training, ordinary people would not be able to do this at all. However, he could not understand why Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had the time to train like this. Most cultivators only wanted to improve their cultivation and were not willing to spend time on such things. However, he had to admit that in certain special circumstances, endurance and control would play a huge role. While everyone was discussing Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's battle, they were still focused on dealing with the skeletons. In fact, the reason they had such endurance was entirely due to their experience in the oceanic world. Because they had been facing the attacks of demon beasts for a long time, their endurance was constantly increasing under such torture. Sometimes, even they themselves did not notice their own improvement. As for their control, it was also subtly improved in the process of the battle. In fact, they did not realize that they had improved in this aspect until they heard Ren Zixing and the rest conversation. The four of them could not help but look at each other in amazement. Hongzhuang, this is all thanks to you. If it wasn't for you, we probably wouldn't have improved so much. Shangguan Yingying's eyes lit up. She was pleasantly surprised by the quiet improvement. Now that she thought about it carefully, if it was her previous self, she would not have been able to last so long. Xiren was also shocked, but then he felt very happy. That's right. I didn't realize it myself. My control seems to be much stronger than before. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. Most of the time, this kind of subtle improvement was something that they said they couldn't find. When they found it, it proved that the improvement was not small. In that case, we've improved Hongzhuang. Chapter 3458. It seems that I shouldn't curse those monsters in the ocean world anymore. Without them, I wouldn't have improved so much. Shangguan Yingying's face had a hint of joy as she chuckled. After holding on for a while, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three retreated from the cave and were replaced by Ren Ziheng and the other two. At this time, many cultivators in the cave had their eyes on Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. Junior sister Bailey, I didn't realize that your combat power was so strong. I underestimated you before. Ren Zime smiled, but there was a flash of appreciation in the depths of her eyes. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three smiled faintly. Senior sister, you flatter us. Our cultivation is the weakest here. Ren Zime waved her hand. You just came to Penglai Palace. This level of cultivation is very normal. Cultivation can be improved, but combat power is not so easy to improve. These were two completely different aspects. At least from the strength that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had shown, their combat power was definitely much stronger than ordinary 5th-level Purple Realm cultivators. The disciples of Penglai Palace all had their own strengths, but she was sure that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were stronger than the other disciples of Penglai Palace. But thinking of this, Ren Zime also understood why Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were set up when they just came to Penglai Palace. It was because their performance was too outstanding. In such a competitive environment, no matter who performed too well, it was easy to be targeted collectively. But he also knew that as long as Bailey Hongzhuang could persevere in such a situation, their achievements would be far beyond other cultivators. Listening to Ren Zime's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' faces were filled with a faint smile, but they didn't say anything else. Senior sister, we're going to restore our primary power first, Bailey Hongzhuang said. In the previous battle, the primary power in their bodies had been exhausted. In this situation, it was undoubtedly very dangerous, so they had to restore their primary power as soon as possible. Rinzime nodded. You guys should go. Thank you for your hard work. Then, the four of them sat on the ground in the cave and quickly took out spirit stones to recover their force. The power of the spirit stones quickly entered the bodies of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others through the circulation of the cultivation method, filling up their almost dried-up dantian. Among them, Di Baichen recovered his origin energy the fastest. The spirit stones in his hands quickly turned into powder. Immediately after, he took out 2 more spirit stones to recover his origin energy. Ever since he transformed into the physique of destiny, his affinity with origin energy had increased a lot. Whether it was his recovery speed or cultivation speed, it was far from what ordinary cultivators could compare to. Bailey Hongzhuang was second in terms of speed. That was because the heaven-defying mental cultivation technique was much stronger than ordinary cultivation techniques, and the circulation of her elemental energy was much faster. When Xiren and Shangguan Yingying's speed was about the same. The two of them also cultivated the top cultivation methods of the Shengxian continent, which allowed them to quickly recover their elemental energy. This was something they often used in the oceanic world. This was because none of them knew when they would face another wave of attacks. Because of the outstanding performance of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, everyone had been paying attention to them. Chapter 3459. Even if their cultivation was stronger than Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, they could not compare with Di Baichen in terms of the speed of absorbing elemental energy because the gap between them was too big. If it was Xiren and Shangguan Yingying's speed, everyone would not find it strange because their elemental energy absorption speed was not much different from theirs. However, Di Baichen's speed was a bit too heaven-defying. If the control and endurance shown by Di Baichen and the others before was not enough to make everyone envious, after all, it could only achieve unexpected results under some special circumstances. However, the speed of recovery now made everyone envious. The speed of elemental energy absorption meant the speed of the practitioner's cultivation. The faster the absorption speed, the faster the practitioner's strength would increase. Everyone looked at the unusually young faces of Di Baichen and the others and gradually understood in their hearts. It was no wonder that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 could reach such a cultivation at such a young age. They were definitely not ordinary people before, otherwise, it would be impossible for them to have such an outstanding performance. Rinzime and the others looked at each other. They already knew in their hearts that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3's identities were not simple. Being able to reach this step was enough to prove their means. Although everyone was very envious, no one said anything. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 gave everyone a very good impression. Although everyone was envious, they were not too jealous. In this Penglai inner palace, there were countless outstanding practitioners. It was not like they had never seen such abnormal geniuses before. Di Baichen's elemental energy recovery speed was extremely fast. With the help of the destined land's affinity with elemental energy, he did his best to recover his elemental energy. Time quietly passed by in this quiet atmosphere until a cry of surprise sounded out and completely broke the silence. "There's a lich there!" An inner palace disciple could not help but exclaim, and his originally calm face became ugly almost immediately. As the disciple's voice fell, everyone who was cultivating could not help but open their eyes and stand at the entrance of the cave to observe the specific situation. "It really is a lich. I didn't expect a lich to appear tonight." "Oh my god, liches rarely appear. How can a lich appear in the outer region? Aren't we doomed? Damn it." Chu Jinfeng secretly snorted, and his handsome face quickly surged with a dignified look. "Why is this lich here? Is this an activity specially organized by the skeleton army?" Ren Ziheng's expression became extremely ugly. This was truly a case of one wave rising after another. They were already barely holding on against the continuous attacks of the skeletons. They didn't know how long they could hold on. However, the appearance of the lich made things worse. How could this be? Rinzime's face was filled with disbelief as her face gradually paled. If that's the case, wouldn't our situation be even worse? With such a huge commotion, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three exited their cultivation state one after another. They looked doubtfully at the group of people with solemn expressions. Chapter 3460. Bewitching and the others looked at Ren Ziheng and the others. They only knew about the skeleton army and the skeleton generals, but they had never heard of the Lich. However, at this moment, just by looking at the ugly expression on everyone's face, they knew that the Lich was definitely not something easy to deal with. The Lich and the skeleton army are all skeletons, but their fighting strength is somewhat different. The Lich's fighting strength can't even be compared to the skeletons, but every time they appear, they will bring us a lot of trouble. Because the Lich can chant, once they chant, the strength of the skeletons will increase. In this way, we will have to use more strength to deal with the skeletons. Based on our current situation, just dealing with these ordinary skeletons is already not easy. If the skeleton's strength increases, I'm afraid we won't be able to last until tomorrow morning. Ren Zimei said in a deep voice. Their situation was already not optimistic, and they didn't expect this to happen. It seems that these guys were prepared to leave their lives here. Listening to Ren Zimei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had a better understanding of the Lich. Looking at the direction where everyone pointed, they discovered the uniqueness of the Lich. The Lich stood in the middle of the skeleton army and didn't seem to have the slightest intention of attacking. He just stood there motionlessly and wore a layer of cloak on his body. However, the cloak was also somewhat shabby and emitted a foul smell. Are these Lich staying in the middle of the skeleton army to be protected? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but ask after observing the situation of the Lich. Ren Zimei nodded. The strength of these Lich is very weak. If they directly face us, they will die. However, every time the Lich appears in the middle of the skeleton army, they won't come out to attack at all. This is the most troublesome part. Once the Lich appears, it means that the skeleton army will attack in a large scale. If there is only 1 or 2 holes, the Lich won't appear at all. It seems that our situation tonight is really bad. At the end, Ren Zimei couldn't help but sigh. This situation really made her feel like the heavens wanted to kill her. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other in dismay. They didn't think that the skeleton army would have such a different situation. This degree of difficulty was simply unimaginable. Just as everyone was discussing, a low chanting sound rang out. In this silent night, there was a hint of desolation and sorrow. However, after this sound rang out, the spirit fire in the skeleton's eyes became brighter. At the same time, the disciples who were in charge of defending the skeleton army suddenly felt the pressure. Damn it, the Lich has already started chanting. Chu Jinfeng's words, the Liches, the skeletons a level, the spirit's strengths, our spirit's energy consumption will increase. One of you, come and help us. The cultivators at the entrance of the cave could not help but shout. Chapter 3461. However, this calm situation did not last long before it was once again broken by a heavy voice. No, if this continues, we won't be able to hold on. Jing Tianlang, who was guarding the cave entrance, couldn't help but say, now there are a total of 4 Liches. The strength of the skeletons has increased again. Our spirit energy consumption is too fast. If we don't deal with these Liches, I'm afraid we will die. Hearing Jing Tianlang's words, everyone opened their eyes and looked at the situation outside the cave. In their line of sight, they saw the 4 Liches standing in the middle of the skeleton army, chanting in a low voice. When the attacking skeletons heard the chanting, it was as if they were injected with chicken blood. Whether it was the attack speed or strength, it was much higher than before. Didn't there only 2 Liches before? Why are there 2 more now? Ren Zimei couldn't help but be surprised. When 2 Liches appeared, she already felt that the situation was very bad. She didn't expect 2 more Liches to appear now. Bailey Hongzhuang walked to Ren Zimei's side. Her beautiful face revealed a trace of surprise. Senior Sister Ren, could it be that the strength of the skeletons will increase with the number of Liches? Ren Zimei nodded. Her eyes revealed an unprecedented seriousness. The chanting power of the Liches can be stacked. The more Liches appear, the more the attack power of the skeletons will increase. This situation, even if I have been training here for a long time, it is the first time I have encountered such a situation. Now we can only continuously use martial arts to block the attacks of the skeletons. There is no time to rest in between. However, our spirit energy is already not at its peak state, and we need to continuously use martial arts. The speed of everyone's rotation will be greatly increased, and the time to recover spirit energy will become shorter and shorter. We can't go on like this. Rin Zimei anxiously stomped her foot. Her eyes couldn't help but turn to Rin Ziheng. Big brother, what should we do now? The previous method couldn't be continued. If they didn't think of another way, sooner or later they would be drowned by the skeleton army. Rin Ziheng's eyes flickered with thoughts. Since that's the case, I'm afraid we can only think of a way to deal with these liches. Otherwise, with our current situation, we won't be able to hold on. After hearing Rin Ziheng's words, everyone's expression couldn't help but change. Dealing with the liches was indeed the best method. However, these liches were in the center of the skeleton army, so it wouldn't be easy for them to deal with them. Jing Tianlang, Chu Jinfeng, what do you think? Rin Ziheng asked. Jing Tianlang and Chu Jinfeng were also very stern. They looked at each other and nodded. That's the only thing we can do for now. According to the location of these liches, we can only force our way through, Rin Ziheng said in a deep voice. Then he looked at the crowd with a solemn gaze. This is the only way now. Is everyone willing to fight a bloody path with us? Chapter 3462. Bewitching and Wenziren looked at each other and said, "We'll join as well." In the group of Inner Palace disciples, there were many injured cultivators. Although the two of them were slightly weaker than the others, at least they were not injured. The combat power they could unleash was not any weaker than the others. Seeing that Bewitching and Wenziren were about to join the group, Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying looked at each other. The two of them were about to join the group, but they were stopped by Bewitching and Wenziren. It's too dangerous to go out now. Ziren and I will go out. The two of you stay here and help guard the cave. Bewitching looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with concern. Under such circumstances, it would be inappropriate for him and Wenziren to not stand out as men. However, there was no need for Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying to go out. It was impossible for all of them to go out. Some of them had to stay behind to guard the cave. Therefore, it was best for Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying to stay here. At least for a short period of time, the cave was much safer than the outside. When Ren Ziheng and the others heard that Bewitching and Wenziren were about to join the group, they could not help but have a look of admiration in their eyes. They knew very well that once they left the cave at this time, they could lose their lives at any time. Now that they were ready to go out, they were already prepared to die. Junior D is right. Junior Sister Bailey, Junior Sister Shangguan, you two should stay in the cave. We need more people inside. Rin Zimei could not help but say. She understood what Bewitching and Shangguan Yingying were thinking. During this period of time, she had already known that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were two perfect couples. Bewitching and Wenziren had decided to go out in order to help Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying gain a chance to survive. At this moment, she couldn't help but admire Bewitching. At least they were real men. Rin Ziheng nodded. You guys stay in the cave. We will do our best to kill the lich. Bewitching, be careful. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Bewitching worriedly. If the four of them were together, she could still guarantee their safety. However, if Bewitching and Ziren left, the situation would become much more complicated. However, under such circumstances, she also understood Bewitching's thoughts. She could not reject him. Bewitching nodded and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang affectionately. Don't worry, I will definitely come back safe and sound. You must keep your promise. Bailey Hongzhuang emphasized. Definitely. Shangguan Yingying also looked at Ziren worriedly. Ziren, you have to be careful too. These skeletons are not easy to deal with. Don't worry, I understand. After Rin Ziheng and the others made the decision to kill the lich, everyone quickly got into formation. The original team immediately split into two. Half of them stayed in the cave to continue guarding, while the other half went out to kill a bloody path. Their target was the lich. Big brother, after you guys go out, you have to speed up. There are not enough people in the cave. I'm afraid we won't be able to hold on for long. Shengguan Yingying couldn't help but remind. Chapter 3463. In the next second, Ren Ziheng turned to Bewitching and the rest and said, "Everyone, let's set off once you're ready." "Let's go," everyone said without hesitation. Immediately after, Ren Ziheng led the group out of the cave and used their martial arts to attack the lich along the way. The group of skeletons became even more agitated when they saw Ren Ziheng and the rest rushing out. They attacked them crazily and chaotically. Ren Ziheng was also very ferocious. The moment he used his martial arts skills, he cleared the skeletons in front of him. His goal was very simple. He just needed to get rid of the lich in the distance. The lich was about 1,000 meters away from everyone. If it was under normal circumstances, 1,000 meters would be covered in the blink of an eye. However, under the current situation, 1,000 meters was extremely slow. Just moving 10 meters forward took a lot of effort. This was because the speed of the skeletons was simply too fast. Most importantly, everyone had a limited amount of elemental energy in their bodies. They couldn't use their elemental energy without restraint. If they couldn't reach the lich, their elemental energy would be depleted, and they could only die here. The lich is really annoying. It's because of the existence of these lich that the skeleton's strength has increased a lot. It's really troublesome to deal with them. Chu Jinfeng cursed the lich as he cleared the skeletons around him. He hated the lich the most. It clearly didn't have much fighting power, but it could make a huge impact on the battle. Every time a lich appeared, it was enough to give everyone a headache. Today's situation was undoubtedly the most troublesome one. We have to rush over quickly. If the lich starts to retreat, we'll be in real trouble, Ren Ziheng said in a deep voice. In their team, he, Jing Tianlang, and Chu Jinfeng were the strongest. It was a pity that Chu Jinfeng's leg was severely injured and couldn't fight alongside them. He could only stay in the cave to command the situation. Chu Jinfeng nodded. His handsome face was dyed with a touch of seriousness. He said to everyone behind him, "Let's try to speed up and think of a way to rush over as soon as possible." All right. Bailey Hongzhuang and Shengguan Yingying stood at the entrance of the cave, paying attention to the situation of the small team rushing out. Under such circumstances, the two of them were unable to calm down and recover their elemental energy. If Bewitching and Shengguan Yingying were to encounter any danger, they would definitely not be able to bear the consequences. Xiren and the others aren't moving very fast. These skeletons are too strong. It's going to be very difficult for them to kill their way out. Shengguan Yingying furrowed her brows. She could only see the radiance of the martial skill being constantly displayed. However, the speed at which they were advancing was not fast enough. When she thought of the consumption of origin power, she could not help but feel apprehensive. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly as a complicated light flashed in her eyes. Indeed, according to this situation, I'm afraid that it will take at least 15 minutes to break through. However, with their Yuan Qi, even if they kill the lich, it will be difficult for them to rush back. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Jing Tianlang looked at her in surprise, because Bailey Hongzhuang's judgment was exactly the same as his. The real situation might be even worse, Jing Tianlang said in a low voice. Chapter 3464. You're not wrong, but you don't know enough about the lich's special traits. Jing Tianlang said slowly, once the liches notice that someone is approaching and attacking them, their chanting will increase. This means that Ren Ziheng and the rest will have to endure even more damage. As soon as these words came out, Bailey Hongzhuang and Shengguan Yingying's faces couldn't help but change. They really didn't know that the lich had such characteristics. As a result, the pressure on Bewitching and the others would inevitably increase. If this goes on, won't it be very difficult for them to kill the liches? Shengguan Yingying's face was filled with confusion. In fact, it wasn't difficult at all. It was simply impossible. This was because they had too few people. If they had enough people, they might still have a chance to kill the liches. However, with such a long distance and the liches' superimposed strength, it would be very difficult for them to reach the liches. Jing Tianlang's expression was solemn and helpless, But we don't have any other choice. This is the only way we can try. As long as we can kill the liches, we might be able to hold on until dawn. The night seemed to pass very slowly. Everyone felt that a long time had passed, but in reality, only half of the night had passed. There were still a few hours left, and it was easier said than done to hold on. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart gradually sank. She understood from Jing Tianlong's words that Bewitching and the rest were basically sending themselves to their deaths. Even if they were to explode with shocking combat strength, they would only be able to kill the liches at most. It would be impossible for them to return. Therefore, long before Ren Ziheng and the rest set off, they were already prepared to die. Perhaps they were already used to such tragic scenes. Death was unavoidable at such a time, and the only thing they could do was to minimize the death rate as much as possible. Ren Ziheng and the rest could accept all of this calmly, but it didn't mean that Bailey Hongzhuang could accept all of this. She definitely couldn't accept that Bewitching was in any danger. If Bewitching didn't make it back, she couldn't accept the result. Bewitching and the rest tried their best to move forward. The surrounding skeletons' attacks were very strong, and everyone had to split up to attack. Even with Ren Ziheng and the rest opening a path in front, the surrounding skeletons were still constantly closing in, making them extremely helpless. However, under such circumstances, everyone gradually approached the lich's location. However, just as everyone was getting closer and closer to the lich's location, the lich's chanting suddenly became louder. Hearing this loud sound, Bewitching couldn't help but frown. Just hearing this sound made him extremely uncomfortable. Immediately, Bewitching discovered the surrounding skeletons' attack power. What's going on? These skeletons have become stronger again. Xiren's expression changed. Originally, these skeletons' strength was only at the 3rd level of the Purple Realm. After increasing their strength, they had reached the 4th level of the Purple Realm. Now, their strength had reached the 5th level of the Purple Realm. Previously, he could use a wave of martial arts to defeat these skeletons, but now that the skeleton's strength had reached the same level as him, it was much more difficult to deal with them. Chapter 3465. The closer we get to the lich, the stronger its chanting will become. So we need to get rid of these lich as soon as possible. Otherwise, it'll be even more troublesome. Ren Ziheng heard the conversation between Xiren and Wen Jinfeng. Chu Jinfeng frowned. We're still 400 meters away from the lich, but these skeletons have already realized what we're trying to do. They're surrounding the lich to protect him. We can't go on like this. These skeletons are so strong that it'll be difficult for us to break through. That's right. I don't have enough elemental energy in my body to deal with these Purple Realm 5th level skeletons. Even if I use it once, it won't be enough to kill them. It'll be difficult to push forward. As the skeleton's strength increased, everyone began to feel the difficulty of pushing forward. Every few steps forward became extremely difficult, and their elemental energy consumption increased. If this continued, there were only 2 possibilities left. One was that they'd successfully reached the lich and killed it, but they'd already lost the strength to go back. The other was that they'd go back now and could temporarily preserve their lives, but in the end, they could only wait for death in the cave. No matter which scenario it was, no one wanted to see it happen. Not good. These skeletons' strength has increased. Big Brother and the others are in trouble. Ren Zimei had been observing the situation outside the cave entrance. When she saw the group slow down, her face couldn't help but turn ugly. That's right. These skeletons' strength has increased to Purple Realm 5th level. Let's not even talk about them moving forward. Just stopping these skeletons from getting closer is already very difficult. The cultivator guarding the cave entrance said with a gloomy face. Ren Zimei anxiously paced back and forth. This can't go on. If we can't get rid of these lich, we'll all die here sooner or later. Even though everyone knew that there was a possibility of dying at any time after coming to this training ground, they still found it hard to accept when this scene really happened. Hongzhuang, what should we do? Shengguan Yingying's face was filled with anxiety. If this goes on, will Xiren and the others not be able to come back? Thinking of this possibility, Shengguan Yingying's pretty face turned pale. She couldn't accept this possibility. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a complicated light. Thousands of thoughts were running through her mind. This situation could not continue to develop like this. Otherwise, everyone would be finished. In the next second, Bailey Hongzhuang sat on the ground at the entrance of the cave. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's sudden actions, Ren Zimei and the others were all puzzled. They didn't know what Bailey Hongzhuang was planning to do. Bailey Hongzhuang quietly took out a zither and placed it on her knees. To everyone's surprise, she began to play. Bailey Hongzhuang's melodious music poured out from between her fingers, easing the originally tense atmosphere a little. However, everyone still looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in confusion, not knowing what she was trying to do. However, very soon, everyone understood why Bailey Hongzhuang was doing this. It was because they realized that the zither music contained the fluctuation of elemental energy. Chapter 3466. The sound of the zither was Bailey Hongzhuang's only area of effect attack. Poison was no longer effective against these skeletons who had long since died, so Bailey Hongzhuang was left with only this one large area of effect attack. Regardless of the outcome, Bailey Hongzhuang could only give it her all and give it a try. She does not usually use this technique very often because she does not have many opportunities to engage in group battles. Furthermore, using the musical assassination technique consumes her yuan power very quickly, so she needs to conserve some energy to protect herself. However, in the current situation, she does not need to worry about her own safety. She only needs to focus on getting rid of these obstructing skeletons. As Bailey Hongzhuang's zither music filled the air, Bewitching and the others who were fighting against the skeletons could not help but turn around to take a look. When they saw Bailey Hongzhuang playing the zither, a gentle light flashed across Bewitching's eyes. He understood that Bailey Hongzhuang was worried about him. The current situation was indeed extremely disadvantageous for them, but they have not lost hope yet. As long as it is not the last moment, they will not give up. The attack power of Bailey Hongzhuang's zither music had clearly exceeded everyone's expectations. The cultivators who were initially standing at the entrance of the cave to stop the skeletons from approaching could only watch as Bailey Hongzhuang's zither music continued to play. Layers upon layers of invisible sound waves immediately blocked off the skeleton army. Even though they were advancing dauntlessly, the semicircular arc was like a barrier which prevented them from getting any closer. Seeing this, they could not help but stop their attacks. Even if the three of them were to join forces, the effect might not be as good as Bailey Hongzhuang's. I never thought that junior sister Bailey would know this technique and the effect would be so good. Ren Zi's beautiful eyes lit up. She had heard of this zither music technique before, but very few people know how to use it. Up until now, this was the first time she had seen someone use it with her own eyes. However, looking at the effect now, she had to admit that the effect was really excellent. The combat power of one person was enough to fight against 4 cultivators. This was a little too shocking. Jing Tianlang also had a look of amazement on his face. The 4 new junior brothers and sisters had given them quite a surprise. In this situation, even they were helpless. They didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to have such a trick up her sleeve. The worry in Shangguan Yingying's eyes did not fade away. She did not know why Hongzhuang was doing this. In fact, the cultivators in the cave were completely capable of stopping the attacks of these skeletons. The ones who were in real trouble were Xiren's team. However, Shangguan Yingying soon understood why Bailey Hongzhuang did that. This was because she realized that Bailey Hongzhuang's zither music attack had gradually changed from an arc to a straight-line attack. This straight-line attack was clearly aimed at the skeletons surrounding Bewitching's team. Bailey Hongzhuang steadied her mind and tried her best to control the direction of her zither music attack. Currently, she could only use He Yang's method to help Bewitching's team. Only by reducing the pressure on them would they be able to reach the Lich faster and complete their mission of killing the Lich. Chapter 3467. Heavens, the attacks of this musical technique can change directions at will. Isn't that a little too shocking? I've never seen anyone use musical techniques before, but I've heard that they're extremely special. Now that I've seen it today, the range of damage is truly shocking. Based on that, junior sister Bailey's attainments in musical techniques should be extremely impressive. Otherwise, it would be impossible for her to reach such a level. Everyone stared at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise. As disciples of the Inner Palace, they had seen quite a bit of the world and had heard of various strange techniques. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 had surprised them time and time again. They could not help but sigh in admiration. Bewitching and the others constantly dealt with the skeletons in the surroundings, but to their surprise, they discovered that the pressure on them had suddenly lessened for some reason. The skeletons in the surroundings were actually unable to get close to them. Everyone could not help but be stunned when they saw this. They had no idea what was going on. What's wrong with these skeletons? Chu Jinfeng's eyes flickered with surprise. Earlier, he had felt that the skeletons were extraordinarily difficult to deal with. Why did it become so much easier in just a short while? Rin Ziheng looked back in Bailey Hongzhuang's direction in deep thought. He said, "Could it be junior sister Bailey? It's Hongzhuang's musical techniques that have helped us block the attacks of the skeletons. Let's use this opportunity to advance quickly. It'll be even more difficult if we miss this opportunity," Bewitching said. He understood that Bailey Hongzhuang had used this method because she was worried about them. She wanted to help them reach the location of the lich as soon as possible. However, he also knew that due to the large range of the musical techniques, Yuan energy would be depleted very quickly. It could not be maintained for too long, so they had to race against time. The eyes of all the Inner Palace disciples present lit up when they found out that Bailey Hongzhuang's help was the reason for the turn of events. They felt gratitude towards Bailey Hongzhuang. Originally, they had almost no hope of returning alive. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's actions had undoubtedly given them a glimmer of hope. Then let's move forward at full speed. Rin Ziheng immediately made a decision after understanding everything. Let's kill our way out. As Rin Ziheng's voice fell, everyone rushed forward without hesitation as if they had been injected with chicken blood. The current situation was the best they could hope for. If they didn't take advantage of this opportunity to deal with the lich, they wouldn't be able to return alive. As the group moved forward, they unexpectedly discovered another thing. This was because they realized that the attack power of these skeletons had actually weakened a little. Originally, under the amplification of the lich's chant, the skeleton's combat strength had already risen to the 5th level of the Purple Realm, which was very difficult for them to deal with. But now, these skeletons' combat strength had actually decreased to the 4th level of the Purple Realm, which surprised everyone. The chanting power of these lich's chant has clearly not weakened. On the contrary, it's constantly increasing. Why is the strength of these skeletons decreasing? Chu Jinfeng's eyes were filled with doubt. The situation that had happened today was really strange. It was hard for him to understand. Chapter 3468. Although liches didn't appear often, it wasn't like they hadn't seen them before. Hence, they had a certain understanding of the characteristics of liches. The liches had never had any effect on the skeleton's strength. However, it was really strange that the skeleton's strength had suddenly decreased. It was a situation that they had never encountered before. However, under such circumstances, they didn't have the time to think about it in detail. All they wanted to do was to get rid of the liches as soon as possible. Xiao He and Xiao Bai sat on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder and watched the small team ahead worriedly. They're getting closer to where the liches are. However, those skeletons are also protecting the liches with their lives. It's going to be another huge battle. Black's face was filled with worry. Tonight's situation could be said to be a frightening night. It was as if all of their escape routes were sealed. But these liches are really interesting. They don't seem to have any intention of leaving. Are they going to stay there forever? Xiao Bai couldn't understand. He had never seen something like this before, so he really didn't understand the characteristics of it at all. I think both the liches and the skeletons are inanimate objects. Naturally, they wouldn't have high intelligence. It's not a bad thing for them to be willing to be targets. At this moment, Jing Tianlang and the others who had been paying attention to the situation outside also discovered the changes in the skeleton's strength. The skeleton's strength has decreased, so everyone is moving faster. Jing Tianlang said as he shifted his gaze to Bailey Hongzhuang. From the beginning to the end, the others and the liches didn't change at all. However, the skeleton's strength suddenly decreased. After thinking about it, there was only one reason left: Bailey Hongzhuang. He quickly figured it out. It must be that Bailey Hongzhuang's music and the lich's chanting were both sonic attacks. There was an effect of the two of them canceling each other out. That was why this happened. This was undoubtedly a huge discovery. In the past, he didn't know any other way to deal with a lich's chanting apart from killing it. Now, Bailey Hongzhuang had given him the answer. If there were a few cultivators in their team who knew how to play the zither, wouldn't that mean that they could cancel out the lich's buff and fight for a better situation for everyone? Bailey Hongzhuang's performance today had truly opened a new door for everyone. It wasn't that the liches couldn't be redeemed, it was just that they hadn't found a way to do so before. Under such circumstances, Bewitching and the others pushed their strength to the limit and finally succeeded in approaching the lich. Seeing this scene, the eyes of the cultivators in the cave could not help but flash with intense excitement. Whether or not they could survive the night depended on whether the lich could be taken care of. As long as the lich was taken care of, they would still have a chance of survival. Bailey Hongzhuang's charming face gradually turned pale. Although she hadn't been using her music for a long time, she didn't conserve any of her elemental energy. She didn't hold back at all and used all her elemental energy without holding back. There were simply too many skeletons. In order to ensure that she could be of the greatest help to the team, her elemental energy was gradually reaching its limit. You're tuning in to the Passion Page's YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.